Amma stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse office, watching the sun rise over Accra. The golden light painted the city skyline in shades of amber and rose, glinting off the modern glass towers that she had helped build over the past 20 years. At 52 years old, she had everything she had ever dreamed of and more. A real estate empire that spanned 3 countries, a name that commanded respect in boardrooms across the continent, a husband who adored her, and a daughter who was about to have the wedding of the century. Amma pressed her palm against the cool glass and smiled. In exactly 8 hours, her beloved Efua would walk down an aisle covered in white orchids toward a future filled with love and possibility. Amma had spent an entire year planning this moment. She had rented out the most exclusive resort on the Ghanaian coast. She had flown in designers from Paris, florists from Morocco, and a world-famous chef from Lagos. Guests were arising from London, New York, Dubai, and Johannesburg. This would be a celebration that people would talk about for generations. Amma turned away from the window and picked up the small velvet box sitting on her desk. Inside was a pair of diamond earrings that had belonged to her own mother, a woman who sold vegetables in the market and never lived to see her daughter's success. These earrings were the only luxury her mother had ever owned, bought with years of careful saving. Today, Amma would give them to Efua as her something old, a piece of history, a symbol of how far their family had come. Her phone buzzed with a message from the wedding coordinator. Everything was on schedule. The flowers had arrived, the musicians were setting up, the cake, a magnificent 7-tier creation, was being carefully assembled in the resort's kitchen. Amma replied with a simple thank you and grabbed her keys. It was time to drive to the resort and surprise her daughter before the chaos of the day began. As she drove along the coastal road, Amma thought about the man Efua was marrying. His name was Daniel, or so Efua had told her, a businessman who worked in international trade. Efua had been oddly secretive about him, sharing few details and never bringing him home for dinner. But Amma had been so consumed with the wedding planning, with the guest lists and the seating charts, and the endless decisions about napkin colors and cake flavors that she hadn't pressed too hard. Efua was 24 years old, a grown woman. She deserved her privacy. And besides, Amma had her own romantic concerns to think about. Her husband, Kwame, had been away on business for months now. He called when he could, but the conversations were always brief, always interrupted by something urgent on his end. Amma missed him terribly, but she understood. Building an empire required sacrifice. She had been absent plenty during their 15 years of marriage, chasing deals and closing contracts, while Kwame held down the home. Efua stood in the center of the room, wearing her wedding dress. It was the most beautiful gown Amma had ever seen, a cascade of white silk and delicate lace that made her daughter look like a princess from a fairy tale. Her veil was down, covering her face in a soft mist of tulle. She was practicing her walk, her steps slow and measured, her hands clutching a bouquet of white roses. But she was not walking toward a mirror. She was not walking toward a window. She was walking toward a life-sized photograph mounted on an easel. And the photograph was of Kwame. Amma's blood turned to ice. She stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to process what she was seeing. Her brain screamed at her that this was wrong, that there must be some explanation, that her eyes were playing tricks on her. But her heart knew the truth before her mind could catch up. Her heart had always known, even when she refused to listen. Amma's voice came out as a whisper. "What is this?" Efua did not answer. She lifted her veil slowly, revealing her face. And in her daughter's eyes, Amma saw something that shattered her soul. She saw no remorse. She saw no shame. She saw only cold, calculating defiance. Efua said, "You weren't supposed to be here yet." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "The ceremony isn't for 3 more hours." Amma took a step forward. Her legs felt like they were made of water. "Efua, tell me this isn't what I think it is. Tell me this is some kind of joke." Efua set down her bouquet and crossed her arms. She looked at her mother the way one might look at an inconvenient obstacle. "It's not a joke, Mother. I'm marrying Kwame today in front of everyone you invited." The words hit Amma like physical blows. She staggered backward, catching herself against the doorframe. "Kwame is my husband. He is your stepfather. He raised you since you were 9 years old." "He was never my father," Efua said coldly. "He was always going to be mine. You were just keeping him warm until I was old enough." Amma's knees buckled. She grabbed a nearby chair and lowered herself into it, her entire body trembling. How long has this been going on?" Amma pressed her hand against her chest. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. Why would you do this to me? I'm your mother. I've given you everything." Efua finally turned away from the mirror and faced Amma directly. There was something dark in her eyes now, something that had been hiding beneath the surface for years. "You gave me things, Mother. Objects, properties, money, but you never gave me yourself. You were always working, always chasing the next deal, always too busy for me. Kwame was the one who was there. Kwame was the one who saw me." "He was supposed to be your father figure," Amma said desperately. "I married him so you would have a stable home." "And instead, you married my soulmate," Efua replied coolly. "But don't worry, we're fixing that mistake today." Amma shook her head slowly, trying to find some logic in this nightmare. "The family, the guests, they can't possibly know about this. They would have told me." Efua smiled, and it was the cruelest expression Amma had ever seen on her daughter's face. "They all know, Mother. Everyone knows. We told them over the past few months. Your sisters, your brothers, your cousins, your business partners, they all promised to keep it secret until after the ceremony. They thought it would be easier for you if you didn't know until it was already done." Amma felt the room spinning around her. Her own family, her own blood, they had all known that her husband was planning to marry her daughter, and not one of them had warned her. Not one of them had picked up the phone and said something. They had let her plan this wedding, spend her money, pour her heart into every detail, all while knowing that she was orchestrating her own betrayal. "They said it would be less painful this way," Efua continued. "They said you would recover faster if you weren't given time to make a scene. But I suppose you've ruined that plan by showing up early." Amma stood up slowly. Her legs still felt weak, but something else was rising inside her now. Something hot and powerful. Something that built an empire from nothing and would not be destroyed by this. "Where is Kwame?" she asked, her voice suddenly steady. Efua's confident expression flickered slightly. "He's getting ready in another suite. He doesn't know you're here." "But he will," Amma said, "because I'm going to find him, and then I'm going to find out just how much of my money he thinks he's taking with him." Efua laughed, but there was nervousness in it now. "Mother, be reasonable. The prenuptial agreement you signed gives Kwame half of everything in a divorce." She stopped directly in front of Efua. and looked into her daughter's eyes. "The prenuptial agreement Kwame signed contains a clause that neither of you apparently read carefully. A morality clause, standard in high-value marriages among the wealthy. It states that if either party is found to have engaged in infidelity, adultery, or moral turpitude, they forfeit all claims to marital assets." Efua's face went pale. "That's not possible. Kwame's lawyer reviewed everything." "Kwame's lawyer was chosen by me, recommended by me, paid by me. I trust no one, in business or in love. That lawyer has been sending me reports on Kwame's activities for the past 5 years, and I chose to ignore them because I wanted to believe in my marriage. But I always had a backup plan. I always protected myself." Efua's confidence crumbled completely. "You're lying. You're just trying to scare me." "Am I?" Efua reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "I can have my legal team here within the hour, and we can go through the documents together, line by line. Or you can take my word for it and start thinking about what your life is going to look like when Kwame realizes he's not getting a single cedi." The door to the suite suddenly opened and Kwame walked in. He was wearing his wedding suit, a perfectly tailored charcoal gray ensemble that Amma had paid for. His face was handsome, his smile was warm, and for just a moment, Amma saw the man she had fallen in love with 15 years ago. The man who had promised to cherish her forever. The man who had held her when she cried and celebrated with her when she succeeded. The man who had been sleeping with her daughter for 3 years. Kwame's smile vanished when he saw Amma standing there. His eyes darted between mother and daughter, calculating, assessing, trying to figure out how much damage had been done. "Amma," he said smoothly, recovering his composure. "What a surprise. Efua and I were hoping to speak with you after the ceremony." Amma turned to face him fully. "Were you? How thoughtful. I'm sure that conversation would have been very comfortable for everyone." Kwame held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I know this is difficult to understand, but what Efua and I have is real. It's not something we planned or wanted. It just happened." "It just happened," Amma repeated slowly. "For 3 years, in the apartment I bought, while you were supposedly on business trips that I funded, while I was planning a wedding that I paid for, it just happened." Kwame's jaw tightened. "You were never there, Amma. You were always working, always traveling, always putting your business before our marriage. Efua was the one who was there for me. Efua was the one who listened, who cared, who made me feel alive. Efua was a child when we married. She was 9 years old. She called you Papa for the first 5 years. Kwame flinched slightly, but he didn't back down. She's not a child anymore. She's a grown woman who knows her own mind, and we love each other. Amma looked at them both standing there in their wedding finery, and she felt something shift inside her. The initial shock was fading now, replaced by something colder and clearer. She saw them not as her family, but as two people who had systematically deceived her for years.
And she saw something else. She saw fear in both of their eyes. They had expected to ambush her after the wedding was done, when it would be too late for her to react. They had not expected her to discover the truth with 3 hours still remaining. They had not expected to face her strength directly. "Here is what is going to happen," Amma said, her voice taking on the commanding tone that had closed 1,000 business deals. "You have 2 choices. The first choice is that I walk out of this room right now, find every single guest at this wedding, and tell them exactly what kind of people you are. I will provide evidence, I will be thorough, and then I will call my lawyers and begin the process of ensuring that neither of you ever sees a single cedi of my money." Kwame and Efua exchanged nervous glances. "The second choice," Amma continued, "is more interesting. You proceed with your wedding. You smile and celebrate and have your special day. But before you walk down that aisle, Kwame, you will sign a post-nuptial agreement that I will have drafted within the hour. You will relinquish all claims to any of my assets, properties, or businesses. You will leave this marriage with exactly what you brought into it, which is nothing. Kwame's face reddened with anger. You can't force me to sign anything. I can't force you, Ama agreed, but I can make sure that if you don't sign, every business associate, every family member, every person you have ever tried to impress will know that you left your wife for her daughter after spending 15 years living off her wealth. I can make sure that your name becomes synonymous with betrayal in every circle that matters. She turned to Efua. And you, my darling daughter, you will sign a document acknowledging that your graduation apartment, your car, your trust fund, and every other gift I have ever given you are loans, not gifts. Loans that I am now calling due. You will begin repayment immediately, or I will pursue legal action. Efua's face twisted with fury. You wouldn't do that to your own daughter.
The room fell silent. Outside, Ama could hear the sounds of the wedding preparation continuing. Staff members were setting up chairs on the beach. Musicians were tuning their instruments. Caterers were preparing the feast. Hundreds of guests were arriving, expecting a beautiful celebration. None of them knew that the bride's mother had just discovered the unthinkable. Kwame spoke first. What if we refuse both options? What if we just get married anyway and fight you in court? Ama shrugged. Then you'll spend the next 10 years in legal battles while I use every resource at my disposal to destroy you both financially and socially. I have more money than you can imagine, and I have nothing but time now. Is that really how you want to spend your marriage? Efua grabbed Kwame's arm. Don't listen to her. She's bluffing. She loves me too much to actually go through with any of this. Ama looked at her daughter, and for the first time since entering the room, she felt tears threatening to fall. Not tears of sadness, but tears of grief. Grief for the daughter she thought she had raised. Grief for the relationship she thought they had. Grief for the future she had imagined for them both. I did love you, Ama said softly, more than you will ever understand. I worked 18-hour days so you could have opportunities I never had. I built an empire so you would never know struggle. Every decision I made, every sacrifice I accepted was for you. And this is how you repay me? Efua's confidence wavered slightly. I deserve happiness too, mother. Kwame makes me happy. Then be happy. But be happy without my money. Be happy without my support. Be happy knowing exactly what your happiness cost. She walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. You have 1 hour to make your decision. I'll be in the garden watching the preparations for this beautiful wedding I paid for. If you choose option 1, I'll expect the signed documents before the ceremony. If you choose to fight me, I'll be giving a very memorable speech at the reception.
Ama walked out of the suite and closed the door behind her. She stood in the hallway for a long moment, breathing deeply, forcing herself to remain composed. Then she walked down the corridor and out into the tropical sunshine. The result was beautiful. The flowers were perfect. The ocean sparkled magnificently. Everything was exactly as she had planned, exactly as she had imagined, except for the fact that her entire life was in ruins. She found a quiet bench overlooking the beach and sat down. From here, she could see the wedding arch being decorated with white roses and trailing ivy. She could see the rows of elegant chairs being arranged on the sand. She could see guests beginning to arrive, dressed in their finest attire, excited to witness what they thought would be a joyous celebration. Her phone buzzed.
She looked down and saw messages from her sisters asking where she was, saying they couldn't wait to see her. These were the same sisters who had known about Kwame and Efua for months, the same sisters who had kept the secret and let her walk blindly into humiliation. Amma deleted the messages without responding. An hour passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. More guests arrived. The wedding coordinator approached Amma several times with questions about final details, and Amma answered them all calmly and efficiently, as if nothing was wrong. Then she saw Kwame walking toward her across the lawn. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. His expensive suit seemed to fit differently. His confident stride had become hesitant and uncertain. He was carrying a folder of papers in his hand. He stopped in front of her bench and stood there for a moment, not meeting her eyes. "We'll sign," he said quietly. "Both of us, we'll sign your documents." Amma nodded slowly. "I thought you might." Kwame sat down on the bench beside her, and for a long moment, they sat in silence, watching the wedding preparations continue on the beach below. Amma asked finally, "Did you ever love me, even for a moment?" Kwame was quiet for a long time before answering. "I thought I did in the beginning, but you were so strong, so successful, so complete on your own. I always felt like I was living in your shadow, like I was just an accessory to your life." "So you found someone who made you feel powerful, someone young and impressionable, someone who looked up to you." "It wasn't like that," Kwame said defensively. "It was exactly like that," Amma replied calmly. "And the saddest part is that you don't even realize it. You think this is love, but it's just ego. You wanted to feel important, and my daughter was foolish enough to make you feel that way." Kwame had no response to that. Amma took the folder of documents from his hand and began reviewing them. Her lawyers had worked quickly, drafting airtight agreements that left no room for future challenges. Kwame's signatures were already on the relevant pages. Efua's would be added shortly. "The wedding will proceed as planned. You'll have your ceremony, your reception, your special day. But when you wake up tomorrow as husband and wife, you will wake up with nothing but each other. No trust fund, no properties, no business interests, nothing." Kwame looked up at her. "You're really going to let us get married after everything?" Amma smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "I want you to have what you want, Kwame. I want you to marry my daughter and start your new life together, because I know something that you don't. I know that the only reason Efua chose you was because of who she thought you were going to be, a wealthy man with half of my empire. Without that, you're just a middle-aged man who betrayed his wife. Without that, the fantasy disappears." She leaned closer to him. "Give it a year, maybe 2. Once she realizes that there's no money coming, once she actually has to work and struggle and sacrifice, she'll start to see you differently. She'll start to resent you, and you'll start to wonder if any of this was worth it." Kwame's face had gone pale. "You don't know that. You don't know anything about our relationship." "I know everything about relationships built on lies. I've been in one for 15 years. The difference is, I can walk away with my dignity and my fortune intact. You will walk away with nothing but the consequences of your choices."
She turned and began walking toward the main building, where her lawyers were waiting with the final documents. Guests smiled and waved as she passed, congratulating her on the beautiful wedding, complimenting her on her dress, telling her how proud she must be. Amma smiled and thanked them all. She was, after all, a businesswoman. She knew how to perform. The ceremony took place at sunset, exactly as planned. Efua walked down the aisle in her magnificent white gown, beautiful and radiant in the golden light. Kwame stood waiting for her under the flower-covered arch, looking handsome and composed. The guests gasped and murmured with appreciation, believing they were witnessing the beginning of a beautiful love story. Amma sat in the front row, wearing an elegant emerald dress, a serene smile on her face. She watched as her daughter and her husband exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives. She watched as they kissed to thunderous applause. She watched as they walked back up the aisle together, man and wife, glowing with happiness. And she watched as both of them glanced nervously in her direction, still uncertain about what she might do. The reception was magnificent. The food was exquisite. The music was perfect. Guests danced and celebrated and toasted to the happy couple's future. Amma moved through the crowd gracefully, accepting condolences disguised as congratulations, fielding awkward glances from family members who knew the truth. When it was time for the mother of the bride's speech, the room fell silent. Efua and Kwame looked terrified. The guests leaned forward eagerly, expecting an emotional tribute. Amma stood at the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces. She saw her sisters and brothers who had betrayed her trust. She saw business associates who would be reading about this in the newspapers. She saw the two people who had hurt her most sitting at the head table, holding hands, waiting to see if she would destroy them. She smiled. 24 years ago, she began, I held my daughter for the first time and made her a promise. I promised that I would give her every opportunity. I promised that I would work hard to give her the life I never had. I promised that I would love her unconditionally. She paused, letting the words sink in. I have kept those promises, every single one. I have worked hard, I have provided opportunities, and I have loved unconditionally. Even now, even tonight, even as I watch her begin a new chapter that she chose without my blessing. The room was utterly silent. Efua's face was frozen in a mask of uncertainty. To my daughter and her new husband, Amma continued, raising her glass, I wish you exactly what you deserve. May your marriage be built on the foundation you have chosen. May you have everything you have earned. And may you understand someday the true value of trust and loyalty. She drank from her glass and sat down. The applause was confused, scattered, uncertain. Nobody quite knew what had just happened, but everyone sensed that something significant had been said. Efua and Kwame exchanged glances across the table. Their smiles had become strained. Their victory suddenly felt hollow. The reception continued, but something had changed in the atmosphere. There was a tension now, an undercurrent of unease. Family members whispered to each other. Business associates checked their phones. The celebration felt less joyous and more obligatory. As the night wore on, Amma found herself standing alone on the resort's terrace, looking out at the moonlit ocean. The sounds of the party drifted out from the ballroom behind her, but she felt completely separate from it all. She thought about the morning when she had woken up believing she had a perfect life. She thought about the shock of discovery, the brutal confrontation, the moment when her world had shattered. She thought about everything she had lost and everything she still had. Her empire was intact, her wealth was protected, her dignity was preserved. She had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and had refused to be destroyed by it. Tomorrow she would file for divorce. She would change her will. She would begin the process of building a new life, one that didn't include a treacherous husband or a disloyal daughter. It would be painful and lonely and difficult, but she had faced difficult things before. She had built something from nothing once. She could do it again. A waiter approached with a glass of champagne.
Ama took it and thanked him, then turned back to the ocean. She thought about Kwame and Efua waking up tomorrow in their expensive honeymoon suite, paid for with the last of her money they would ever touch. She imagined them beginning to realize that the fantasy was over, that the wealth they had counted on was gone, that they were left with nothing but each other and the weight of their betrayal. She imagined Efua calling her in a few months, crying, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. She imagined Kwame trying to contact her through lawyers, attempting to renegotiate, claiming he had been coerced. And she imagined herself sitting in her penthouse office, watching the sun rise over Accra, calmly deleting their messages one by one. Some betrayals could be forgiven. Some bridges could be rebuilt, but there were certain lines that once crossed could never be uncrossed. Certain wounds that no matter how much time passed would never fully heal. Ama sipped her champagne and watched the waves rolling onto the shore. The wedding celebration continued behind her, but she was no longer part of it. She had done what she came to do. She had faced her betrayers with dignity. She had protected herself with intelligence, and she had walked away with her head held high. Tomorrow would be a new day. Tomorrow she would begin again. But tonight, she would allow herself this moment of quiet grief, this moment of saying goodbye to the daughter she had loved and the husband she had trusted. This moment of mourning for the life she thought she had. The moon hung low over the water, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the sound of wedding music playing. It should have been the happiest night of her life. It should have been a celebration of love and family and new beginnings. Instead, it was an ending, a painful, necessary ending that would allow her to finally move forward. Ama finished her champagne and set down the glass. She took one last look at the ocean, then turned and walked back toward the resort. Her driver was waiting to take her home. Her lawyers had the documents secured. Her future was waiting. She passed the ballroom where the reception was still going strong. Through the windows, she could see Efua and Kwame dancing together, holding each other close, looking like the perfect happy couple. They caught her eye as she passed, and for just a moment, their smiles faltered. Ama nodded once, a final acknowledgement, then walked back toward the resort. Her fonded daughter's dream wedding. She had watched her husband marry someone else. She had survived the worst betrayal of her life. And as she stepped into the warm night air and walked toward her waiting car, Ama realized something important. She was not broken. She was not destroyed. She was exactly who she had always been, a woman who knew her worth, who protected what mattered, and who never let anyone take what she had earned. The car door opened, and she slipped inside. The driver asked where she wanted to go. "Home," she said. "Take me home." The car pulled away from the resort, leaving behind the lights and music and celebration. Ama watched through the window as it all grew smaller and smaller, until finally it disappeared entirely into the darkness. And then she turned her eyes forward, toward the road ahead, toward the future she would build for herself, toward the life she deserved. It would not be easy, it would not be quick, but it would be hers and hers alone. And that, she knew, was enough.
And just like that, the tail lights disappeared into the darkness. But this story is far from over, because somewhere in that car, Ama is sitting in silence, planning her next move. And somewhere back at that resort, Efua is waking up to the reality that the money is gone, the safety net is gone, and the mother she betrayed is gone. But what happens when the honeymoon ends? What happens when Kwame realizes that the fantasy he married is already crumbling?
What happens when Efua picks up her phone and dials the one number she swore she would never call again? And what happens when Ama sees her daughter's name on the screen and has to decide, for the first time in her life, whether some bridges are truly beyond repair? If you want to find out, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment below telling me, should Ama forgive her daughter or should she let them both burn? Part 2 is coming, but only if you tell me you are ready for it. Because this empire was built by a woman who never backed down, and neither does this story.